Now is the time to deliver. Now is the time to restore trust. And now is the time to inspire hope. And I do have hope.
The United Nations is an international organization founded in 1945 when the world was in ruins at the end of the Second World War. Currently made up of 193 member states, the UN and its work are guided by the principles contained in its founding charter. The signatory of that charter hoped the UN would prevent another world war like the one they had just lived through. They charged the UN with maintaining international peace and security, protecting human rights, and upholding international law. The UN has evolved over the years to keep pace with a rapidly changing world. But one thing has stayed the same. It remains the one place on Earth where all the world's nations can gather together, discuss common problems, and find shared solutions that benefit all of humanity. Hello, my name is Julian. I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Indonesia, which means that I am the representative of the UN Secretary General and as such, the highest UN official in Indonesia. I'm here today to answer some of your questions about the UN. So let's start. The UN Day is your day, my day, our day to all of us. Actually, this is the anniversary of the day the UN Charter entered into force in 1945. The UN Day marks the official creation of the United Nations organization. I said this is our day because our mandate is to defend the fundamental rights of all people. So the UN Day is really for all of us to celebrate diversity, inclusion, and of course, peace. The UN works with and for the entire society. That is to say, we work with the government, with civil society, private sector, academia, etc. And our role is to support everyone, including school students like you. The objective of the UN is to ensure that all people, no matter who they are, where they live, what they believe in, can live a life that is safe, free, dignified, and prosperous. To achieve that, the UN elaborates the main conventions and treaties, the international laws that define the universal approach to the different aspects of life and development. For instance, the Convention on Human Rights, on climate, on governance, on health, education, on all different sectors. And in a country like Indonesia, we support the government and the Indonesian society to implement those conventions that will ensure a prosperous, equitable, and sustainable development for all. This is a promise that the leaders of the world have made to the peoples of all nations. They promise to leave no one behind as we work to ensure development, peace, and prosperity. It has to be for everyone, otherwise it means nothing. No development is sustainable and relevant unless it includes and benefits all of us. So leaving no one behind means that we focus on those who are usually left behind in society: the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed, too often the women and sometimes the youth. The leaving no one behind promise is actually targeting the discrimination and inequalities that cause people to be left behind. And that includes gender discrimination, discrimination against people with disability, against sexually and gender diverse people, against refugees, you name it. Only then, when everybody is included, can we say that a country is developed. We have 24 UN agencies, funds and programs that work for Indonesia. They are active across the country, from Aceh in the west all the way to Papua in the east. And the UN employs more than 2,500 staff members. And do you know that about 90% of them are Indonesian? So you see, the UN is really your organization. We don't have an army per se, but we have UN peacekeepers called the Blue Helmets, whose role is to keep peace. The UN is present in many areas, including conflict areas, in countries divided by wars. The Blue Helmets, who are composed of military, police, and civilian personnel from different countries, working under the UN command, help countries navigate the difficult path from conflict to peace. UN peacekeepers only use force in self-defense or in defense of their mandate. And actually, Indonesia is one of the top 10 contributors to the Blue Helmets. The country provides about 3,000 military and police officers to 9 peacekeeping missions around the world today, including more than 150 female peacekeepers. And let me use the opportunity of the UN Day to thank them all for their service and sacrifice. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or otherwise called the SDGs. The SDGs are a universal call to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people can enjoy peace and prosperity. So, needless to say that this is a massive task, and it can only be achieved if everyone contributes to it. Governments have the primary responsibility to do this through their actions, their budgets, their laws. But each and every one of us can contribute too. And you take into consideration the welfare of other people and our shared planet. You are helping to achieve the SDGs. Oh, I also see some more questions that would be best answered by my colleagues. Let me ask them. Hi, colleagues. Okay, first question. I see there's a question about UNICEF. Deborah, why don't you answer this question first?
Thank you, Valerie. UNICEF works to realize the rights of every child in all countries. In Indonesia, we work with the government and with different institutions to make sure every child has what they need to grow up healthy, strong, have a good education, nutrition, sanitation, are safe, they're protected from harm, they're able to grow to their full potential, even if they are poor, even if they live in remote areas or have a disability. Good question. Stunting means that a child is shorter than the average considering their weight. Stunting is a chronic, long-term form of malnutrition that accumulates over time and creates irreversible damage that goes well into adult age. Stunting cannot be treated once it happens, so prevention is the only effective way to deal with it. Wasting, on the other hand, means that the weight of the child is lower than the average, considering how tall they are. Wasting is a form of acute malnutrition, very dangerous, can be life-threatening, and for this we need very specific medical treatment, what we call the integrated management of malnutrition.
Good nutrition and good health is essential for the children of Indonesia, especially those children who are in school. With the impact of the pandemic and children returning to school, their health and nutrition becomes even more essential to their academic success. A state of good health and good nutrition for children in Indonesia gives them the capacity and the ability to achieve academic success and contribute to the future of Indonesia. WFP is committed to working with the government of Indonesia and our key stakeholders, both non-governmental, academia, other UN organizations, to ensure that children have access to affordable, healthy, and nutritious meals, and that the children themselves, their teachers, and their parents are well equipped to understand and provide for those healthy and nutritious.
Hunger means you are in a state where a person suffers chronically with not having enough food to eat every day. Whereas malnutrition is a situation when a person's diet contains too little nutrients. This is very interesting, People get confused with food value chain or food chain and food system. Food system is a system that encompasses the entire range of interlinked activities with various actors involved in production, transportation and storage, processing, distribution, consumption, and even disposal. But it also considers other important factors such as social protection, youth, inclusion, environment, impacts of climate change, enabling policies and environment. So in simple language, I would say, keep 4 F's in mind: food, feed, fuel, and fiber. And these are the major elements of a good food system.
Agriculture is very important in Indonesia because, as it happens in many other countries, it is the activity that absorbs the largest portion of employment and of self-employment. But in addition to that, specifically in the case of Indonesia, it is very important because, thanks to the natural resources the country was blessed with, it has a huge potential for agriculture, livestock, and fisheries production to satisfy the needs of its population with rich, healthy, and nutritious food, both within Indonesia, but also to export to other countries.
Climate change is a change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activities that alters the composition of the global atmosphere, in addition to the natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. Global warming, on the other hand, is an increase in combined air and sea surface temperatures of average over the globe and over a 30-year period. Now that's the scientific definition, but in plain language, global warming refers to the Earth's rising surface temperature, while climate change refers not only to the long-term warming of the Earth's surface, but also to the changes of the climate measurement that is increasing. It includes precipitation, rising sea levels, shrinking mountain glaciers.
Thanks, Nico. Okay, moving on to the next questions. I see there are a couple of frequently asked questions on specific issues like gender equality and human rights. So let me pass the mic to my colleagues Anjali, Jamshed, and Michiko, who will answer these questions.
Having the power and agency to make choices over our bodies and futures without discrimination, violence, or coercion. You have full autonomy of your body when your reproductive rights are fulfilled and protected. The power to say yes and the right to say no. Educating ourselves about our rights to bodily autonomy is the first step towards claiming this right.
Gender equality simply means that women and men and girls and boys have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities in all aspects of their life. It means that opportunities for all people should not be based on whether they happen to be born male or female. Gender equality is not just a woman's issue. It is a basic human right and should be everyone's concern. Sadly, there isn't a single country or a sector that has closed the gender pay gap. In Indonesia, according to ILO's data, women earn 23% less than men do on average. High-paying jobs are also dominated by men. Informal employment, unpaid domestic work, restrictive gender roles, discriminatory hiring and promotion decisions, and patriarchal structures and sexist attitudes are just some of the challenges. The gender pay gap is rooted in systemic inequalities. So it's really high time we change this both in terms of practice and policy.
Yes, it still exists. there are around 293,000 of child labor recorded in Indonesia, and it is dominantly in agriculture sector in rural area. Indonesia made huge efforts to decrease child labor in the last decades, and it is good to see the number of child labor in Indonesia is on decline. However, we have to make sure that this pandemic does not push back the progress that we made in the past. ILO will continue to support the efforts taken by Indonesia to reach the goal of child labor-free Indonesia by 2025.
Thank you, Michiko. Now, there's a question I'd like to ask my colleague around development, technology, industry, and culture. First one, what does UNDP do?
Thank you, Valerie. In answering this question, I'd like you to consider the following fact. Did you know that in 1966, nearly 1 out of 3 people in the world lived in poverty? That's a shocking number. UNDP was founded in 1966 to address this challenging situation as the development program of the UN system. And since then, we've played a critical role in reducing poverty, creating jobs, empowering women, protecting the environment, and much more. We introduced the concept of sustainable human development, in which people have the choice, empowered to make decisions about their own lives. We are present in 170 countries and territories and work closely with the governments, civil society, private sector, and international community.
Internet access in Indonesia is growing, but there are still people who either do not use the internet or do not have access to the internet. According to ITU statistics from 2020, the percentage of population in Indonesia that uses the internet is 54. There are a few other statistics that I'd like to point out. There are fewer women than men who use the internet, 51% versus 57%. Similarly, there is a disparity across the age group. Young people are between the age of 15 and 24 are more connected. 84% of them are actually connected to the internet, whereas those who are above 75, only 2% of them are connected to the internet. Indonesia, as I mentioned, has progressed well, but I think more work needs to be done.
Big data is actually generated from, let's say, your handphone, or when you travel, when you make a transaction with your ATM, and whenever you do these things, when you're moving around and connecting to different towers, these all generate new sources of data. And you can imagine that there's a lot of this data, and that's why it's called big data. What we do in Pulse Lab Jakarta is try to use these new sources of data in combination with traditional data that is collected to help the government in making policies that are faster, more effective, and hopefully better or stronger for to support Indonesia's development.
Well, we are in the midst of a new industrial revolution, referred to the fourth industrial revolution, that represents the fastest, I would say, period of innovation in history. The Industry 4.0 built on digital revolution and convergences of the 21st century's technologies, such as nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive science. In comparison to the previous revolution, the Industry 4.0 is evolving at an exponential pace for creating economic opportunities and environmental opportunities, as well as social return. It also, I would say that the Industry 4.0 has a great potential to trigger major structural shift in the global economy and affecting the societies as a whole.
Yes, I think this is the most known from the part of UNESCO. UNESCO is such is a credible world heritage, an unique and outstanding example of our world cultural and natural diversity, of outstanding universal value like the Borobudur temple or Yunjum Kulon, home to the German Rhino. It's a place so special that it deserves protection for current and future generation and for all the peoples of the world.
Now, I have questions on humanitarian emergencies, refugees, migrants, crime and health. Victoria, you can take the first question.
OCHA is the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. We have the mandate to coordinate the response to humanitarian emergencies around the world, whether they're caused by natural disasters or conflict situations. We have 5 main areas of work. The first one is obviously coordination, and what that means is that OCHA brings humanitarian stakeholders, brings people around the table to make sure that there are no overlaps and also no gaps in any humanitarian response. We also have a responsibility in what we call information management, and what this means is the collection of information and distribution of that information when it comes to a humanitarian response. We also play a role in advocacy, and what that means is that we advocate for the rights of people that have been affected by crises around the world, but also for the rights of humanitarian workers to make sure that they're protected and they can do their work. In the area of policy, OCHA collects lessons learned, information, good practices from around the world and consolidates them so that those practices and the guidance around the practices can be disseminated and be used hopefully in future emergencies. And the fifth and final main area of work for OCHA, which is humanitarian financing, means that we have a number of financing systems where money is collected and made available very, very quickly to respond to any urgent emergency around the world. And having those pots of money, the funding available and ready to be used is key in making sure that we can respond quickly to any emergency.
Yeah, I would say human trafficking is a major issue in Indonesia, but the extent of it we really do not know, because data is an issue. The collection of data is an issue. And so I think there's more work that needs to be done in improving the collection of data. That will really give us an opportunity to look at the real extent of the problem.
Refugees are people who are forced to flee. They don't have a choice. They need to flee to save their life. Refugees will often not have proper travel documents because of the little time they have before they leave for safety. Migrants, they move for a variety of reasons, and they will be able to cross borders with their valid travel documents and issued visas. Migrants, they often travel because they find work in another country, which will allow them to improve their and their families' living conditions.
Well, since any one of us could be a migrant today or a migrant at some point in the future, it's important to recognize that the rights of migrants are protected by international law, regardless of how and why they arrive in a country. They have the same rights as everyone else. There are also special or specific protections provided under conventions such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that everyone has the right to seek and enjoy asylum from persecution in other countries. There are also very specific protections in the 1990 Migrant Workers Convention, which protects migrant workers and their families, widely understood now as the need to protect all categories of migrants and to provide assistance without regard to status, to those who've fallen vulnerable or have suffered violations of rights in their migration journey.
For HIV in Indonesia, since the beginning of the AIDS epidemic in the early 90s, we have seen that there are over 800,000 people who have died of AIDS in Indonesia. And at the moment, there's an estimated of around 500,000 people living with HIV. Out of that, unfortunately, we're still struggling to test and have everyone know their status, because the key here is to have people to know their status as quickly as possible so they would get treatment. And once they're on treatment, then they will be healthy and they can do a lot of things, work, go to school, etc. The percentage of treatment coverage out of those people who are living with HIV is only 26%, which is very low. It's one of the lowest in the world. And we're working hard together with the Ministry of Health and our community partners to scale this up, because this is exactly in line with the principle of no one left behind. We have 500,000 people living with HIV. They must get treatment. They must be healthy and be able to contribute positively to society.
The World Health Organization leads and champions global efforts to give everyone, everywhere, an equal opportunity to live a healthy life. We are guided by science, and we dedicate our work to the well-being of all people in the world. We have been leading and coordinating the global effort to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of work happening globally, regionally, country level, and provincial and district level, say in Indonesia. But in order to end the pandemic, we need everybody's help. Please get vaccinated as soon as it is your turn. Vaccines are very effective in preventing severe disease and deaths. But vaccines alone can't stop COVID-19. So once you're vaccinated, it is still important to follow the necessary health protocols. Clean your hands regularly with soap and water, or use hand sanitizer. Wear a mask, maintain safe distance. If you can do that, you make sure your family, your friends, your relatives, and your neighbors can all get vaccinated and can all follow the health protocols. We will see an end to the pandemic soon.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you learned something about what the UN does in Indonesia and around the world. I wish you a very happy UN Day. Terima kasih.